Come on. Come on now.
Okay, we're going to get started. We only have a couple hours, so people will probably start wandering in, but that's okay. Here, so I can get through. Hmm? Yeah. You want this? You got it. I only need this. Okay. For those of you who don't
sitting in the hot seat.
All right, there we go.
know, yes, Lucy is in the hot seat.
All right.
Those of you that don't know Scott Asherman, hi, this is Scott.
Hi, Scott.
Hey, everybody.
We're real happy to have Scott here because we've never, as far as I know, Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, we've never had a lighting workshop, a studio and field lighting workshop.
You probably can tell.
So I was telling Scott earlier, a lot of us producers wing it in most cases. I mean, I went to school and I learned a little bit about lighting, but I always wing it, and I know a lot of you guys do too. So this is really great. We appreciate this. Tell you a little bit about Scott here. Of course, he started at MCAT, if you don't know. So we've helped him in his career. That's what we like to
I
think.
started here when I was 5 years old.
Yeah, it was a couple years ago.
Yeah, a couple years ago I took that growth hormone. I'm only 10 right now, so.
Don't listen to him. But he did start here, and we did push him to stardom. You know, we said, out, Scott. You got to leave MCAT. You got to
Gotta get
go
out.
on to bigger and better things. He has been at KCI for almost 3 years as a commercial producer. He's done, he told me he's done almost 200 commercials for that channel and probably elsewhere that he's done lighting for. He won a national award for his lighting, too, for a show that he produced at the Washington State University is where he graduated with a degree in communication. So he's got a lot of background. Please ask him questions once he goes through the basics. This is here for you. It's going to be a hands-on. Ask questions about certain situations that you have been in, whether it be studio in the field. You know, let's just kind of wing it here. So, Scott, it's all yours.
All right. Well, basically what I'm going to do is, since we've got all these people in here, studio lighting, I set it up right now, basically. Hey, Lori, can we switch it over to the single shot? There we go. So you're in the hot seat. Okay. Basically, this is all, we can talk a lot more about studio lighting, but the main thing I want to get across to you guys is, well, two main things, is direct lighting is always the best way to light, and people always have a problem with overlighting. With cameras these days, you really don't need as much light as you think. Like right now, you look at it, if you notice a lot of the shows that you do, have you seen, you guys use this big light right here, and what that does is it lights up that thing back there, which isn't too pretty. It's what it is. It's a sound. Whoops. It's a sound thing. But basically, what direct lighting does is it focuses the viewer's attention on what you want them to see. So those are basically the two things that I'm just going to stress on. Don't overlight, and as much as possible, try to use direct light. We'll get into bouncing light, and when I talk about direct light doesn't have to be harsh. It's basically a good example that I've been taught as far as direct lighting and diffuse lighting is direct lighting is when it's a sunny day out and the sun is shining, blue sky, and you see the sun. That's direct lighting. Diffuse lighting is a cloudy day and the sun comes through the clouds and it bounces all over the place. That's diffuse lighting. And this gets kind of confusing because you can diffuse direct lighting, but you can control it. You can control it with barn doors. With this thing right here, you can't really control it. With an umbrella, you can't control your light because it's bouncing off this and going out all over the place. Basically, with direct lighting, you can get the features on someone a lot better. Diffuse lighting, what it's going to do is, if you ever notice on a cloudy day, basically it makes things kind of look flat, your face look flat. which in certain, and I'm always going to be going back and forth because there's certain aspects where it's really good, there's other aspects that it's really bad. That's one thing about lighting. You can go on for eons talking about it. So in studio lighting, basically what I'm using here is a two-point lighting scheme. Backlight, you usually want your backlight directly behind your subject. And in most cases, it's all right to move your you don't want your subject against a wall. You want to give some kind of depth of field, because what you're working with right here, this is a one-dimensional plane, right? So what you want to try to do is give the viewer somewhat of a three-dimensional space. Give him a feel of three dimensions, of just angles and everything. When you use that, you lose it. When you use diffuse lighting or bounce in a small area, it flattens everything out. And usually with the backlight, it's all right to have the backlight, it's usually probably at 75%, and your front light can be at 50. So your front light is a little less than your backlight. You always kind of, for most times, you want your backlight to be a little harsher than your front light. It gives you that definition. As you can see on his shoulders right now, you can kind of see that definition coming off right there.
So you want to aim it at the back?
You want to aim your, and everybody right here, since I haven't prepared and I can go on tangents all over the place, everybody just go ahead and feel free to raise your hand, ask a question, and I'll go there with you. But yeah, you want to aim your backlight pretty much, right here. You want to hit the shoulders, and you want it directly behind the person as much as possible. And that's the nice thing about studio lighting, is that you can hang your light overhead and get your nice angle that comes down and hits the subject on the shoulders, and you get that nice.
Where we can get the light because of the size of the room too, right? It's one of the things I've had problems with this, guys, when I've got more than 2 or 3 people here, like 5 or 7 people at the table. It seems like we need 2 lights for each person.
See what you can do also with this is, with this I can light 2 people with this. I could light 2 people. If they're sitting close together, I can light 2 people. When you get to 5 or 7 people, which is hard in the size of studio this, with what you have to use, I would say, number one, forget about trying to make it look good. You're basically just trying to get everybody in there, because 5 to 7 people basically in a show anyways is really tough to do, like single shots on all the time. So basically the biggest thing is they need to be lit no matter what. So you go with the diffuse light, and you don't worry about the way it looks.
Anything you can do about the shadow underneath Stacy's chin, under his nose, which is another problem that I've had. Can't get lights far enough out to the side, it's coming straight down on
Okay, now when it comes to basically when you light, you always want to have at least 2 lights per person. You can go 3 lights, the basic 3-point lighting. If you guys haven't heard about it, we can go into that a little bit later on to address your question. You basically want to have, at least 2 lights per person. And if that's hard, you can. I've faked it with having, if they're close together. In television, it's another thing is, in television you got to get people to break their personal comfort zone. Because if you notice, like we're talking like right here, this is a comfort zone. See, sitting like this. I can't really see. But basically, in television, what happens is it makes everything look wider. Like right here, this is our comfort zone. But then on television, it looks like we're kind of far apart. So basically, you try to get people closer together. And what you're talking about as far as the light, shadow, what that happens is because if you have a light directly in front of the person, then you won't get that shadow going on because it's hitting them straight in front of the face, like this. If it's over to the side, then you're going to get that shadow going on.
You've got to be able to hit each individual subject with a key light.
With a key light, yeah. Which is like what you say when you're using 7 people. It is a lot of lights, yeah. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing how many lights it does take on certain things. But you can get away with using 1 light for 2 people if you're going to have them close together. What you do is you flood these out, open up your barn doors, basically in this studio, what I'd suggest is trying to keep the light off the background here, because
The problem that we have. Is
right,
It bleeds over.
right, it bleeds over, and it's always something that the viewer is going to be looking at the background instead of the people.
And the backlighting coming out of the lights is a problem too. It begins to light up the rest of the room, like right here.
Well, that, you don't really have to worry about that. It's the only thing you have to look at is where your camera's going to be, right? Your camera's not going to be looking over there. So if it spills over there, that's fine.
It seems to light up the areas outside. You
Mhm.
can see cameras moving behind people sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah,
Well, a lot of the time
Yeah.
actually, it's just so small.
right. It is
One of the
small,
things
and
we're
that's
trying to
something.
address here is there some way to move lights down on the wall to these things?
Right. Oh,
Take
that's
care of
another
some of
thing.
the shadows,
Mhm.
and so that we can still maybe pull the f-stop back so that it fades into black behind people a little bit more.
Mhm. Well, that's something you
Which I
can.
see on PBS a lot, but I've also seen wide shots of the studio, which is like 4
Yeah.
times
This
this size.
isn't always here.
Right. I mean, if you do a studio show and if you got a bunch of people, I guess what I'd suggest is maybe trying to get a light kit if you can do that for yourself. And then you could do a little more light and just keep your lights. Again, I want to stress you don't want to overlight. You can always overlight.
Mm-hmm.
I want to add to that too, because I think I tell people, a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to get rid of shadows.
They're natural.
Instead of, I actually, to me, I think that you do get into that overlighting situation where they think they have to take care of everything. So I think it's more of getting either a dramatic shadow or a balanced shadow. So when
Right.
you have 7 people, that they kind of sort of look the same lit, so that they're not like one's got a lot of shadow and
Right.
one
Right.
doesn't, that kind of thing.
Keeping
But
it even, and then
And
people
keeping
end
it
up with-
even.
But that's the goal, is not
Right.
to get rid of, at least in my experience.
Yeah.
every-
I mean, basically, when you're working with 7 people in a studio this size, basically what I'm telling you, you got to throw out the window and just go for it. You just all you want to do is evenly light. And I'd break some of the cardinal rules that another thing I probably didn't touch on is never, ever, ever indoors or outdoors, never try to use fluorescent lights, because fluorescent lights are terrible. They look bad on television. They give people an ugly look. If you have to use fluorescent lights, switch your filter to an outdoor filter, to sunny, because I'll go back a little bit here. Light has a temperature. It's called Kelvin. It's not heat. It's infrared kind of thing. It's the color of light. Incandescent light right here is at 3200, and it gives off a yellow, kind of a yellowish glow. A foot candle, which in film and cinematography they talk about foot candles all the time. 1 foot candle is I think 100 Kelvin, I think. And that's like really orange glow. It's a real orange glow. Sunlight is 5600 Kelvin, which gives off a blue tint. Fluorescents are at 6500 Kelvin, which gives off kind of a greenish tint.
You talked about these lights that we have.
Right, these fluorescent lights, and anywhere, well, there's certain places you go into where they have different types of fluorescents that are supposed to match sunlight, which is fine, then it looks great, because that's 5600 Kelvin. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you're going out and you're shooting something and you have to have the fluorescent lights on, don't go to 3200, go to 5600, and white balance on outdoor light, because it's going to be a lot closer to, 5600 is a lot closer to 6500 than 3200 Kelvin. And those are your filters that you have right here. Filter 1 on most cameras is 3200 Kelvin. Filter 2, that's where you get varies on different cameras. It could be direct sunlight, which is 56. Then you have filter 3, which is a neutral density, or for cloudy day. Or no, filter 2 is 56 for cloudy days, and filter 3 is for sunny days, which is neutral density filter, which knocks your f-stop down. It depends on cameras, like a quarter, whatever, basically, so you have more play with your iris.
So say that again then. If they're going to use fluorescent lighting in this studio,
If you're going to use,
they should put the filter on 56K.
you should put your filter on 56K and white balance to that.
But with our new lights in here now,
No.
that shouldn't be
As big
a
a,
factor. They shouldn't have to have these on.
right,
So,
right.
I guess if you wanted to really bright,
Right.
I know you could.
But then again, we get into overlighting, and I guess I'm addressing your thing. When it comes in this studio, having 7 people, this studio is probably meant to have maybe 4 or 5 people if you're trying to do some halfway nice lighting. Doing 7 people in a show is, like you probably know, is really tough to do with 2 cameras. And as far as lighting it, is basically you just want it to look even. So in that case, I would say, turn on that, and don't worry about shadows, as long as they're not massive amounts of shadows, as long as they're not like,
People have massive shadows in their nose, and we couldn't get rid of it unless we used one of these lights pointed kind of up underneath and across, and right in people's faces.
right. See, and that's another thing. If you're interviewing like guests and all that stuff, and they don't feel comfortable with lights, because this is a different thing. In this station, this is a community access. What you're trying to do is you're trying to provide a service for the public, and you're trying to get them to what you're trying to get information across. So as far as I always say art, as far as making it look beautiful, sometimes you just got to say, hey, screw it. I just need to make sure it's presentable enough to watch. And if that is with the fluorescent lights on, as long as they can see the person and the person sounds good audibly, then that's fine. There's nothing you're going to spend a lot more time. You're going to spend a lot more time trying to get rid of shadows with all those people. And then another problem with direct lighting is you need to be able to control them. And that means they can't be moving too much one way or another, or move their seat, because then they're going to be out of the light. With diffused light, it doesn't really matter because it's going all over the place. You move and it's going to be even, for a certain amount of feet. So, that's a tough one. I guess.
Well, I did it 3 different ways. The first one I did with Montana Council for Families was the 3 lights we had left that were still working pointed to the ceiling.
See, that's what you're doing right there, and that's really good. That is
It's a really flat, gray-looking shop that you can see everybody in
right.
shadows.
Yeah, that's what you're doing there. What he was doing there is that's diffusing. You're bouncing your light, so you're not getting any shadows.
In that situation, would it be beneficial to use filters? Or?
Tough spot? No, I'd say, again, I'd have to go to the thing is, if you're worried about shadows, maybe try it with trying your filter at 5600. Put it on fluorescence. Then, and then, sure, yeah, let's go ahead and turn on those lights.
Okay.
See what I mean about how it kind of looks kind of nasty, kind of nasty
Put it on
light?
56, and let's be white. Somebody have a white card?
Yeah, or you could use, yeah. And we'll turn off these lights right here.
Kind of automatic too. Is what,
Okay.
what most. Okay, let's see what happens. Now it says color temperature low.
Yeah, don't
change
worry.
Filter, try again.
Don't worry about that. It's something they lie to you.
I don't think so. Still white balanced. Okay, thank you.
See, the skin tone is pretty. Again, it's really flat, but that's because it's really.
It's just function of the lighting.
It's the
then.
function of the lighting because you're not doing direct lighting.
Well, let's try it now on
Um,
what we would normally do. Let's put it back on filter 1. Are y'all catching that?
That's another thing I was going to go over. Again, like when I started off, there's multitudes of ways you can go. Its general rule of thumb is it's not good to mix your different light sources because especially if you don't have a monitor. If you have a monitor and you got time, hey, go for it. Another big thing to say is just mess around. All it is a camera and lights. Go ahead and practice. But general rule of thumb is you want to try to use one light source. Keep it to one light source, whether it's outdoor light, whether it's fluorescent light. When I'm usually doing commercials, I usually try to cut fluorescence no matter what. Because when I say this is a last resort, basically, is for balancing, just so you don't get that green tone that you sometimes do with fluorescence. is I turn off the fluorescence and I use my own lights because it's always going to look a lot better. And again, if you're focusing only on a couple subjects, you want those people to focus on that instead of right now. You know, you look at it, and even if you get it on in a tight shot, the background is still lit up, and it's still, people are still going to be focusing on that, where you want them to focus on what is at hand, whether it is a product, whether it is a person talking, whether it is whatever. You want them to focus on that and not in your background. And what happens with this is, as you can see now, is our depth of field has been lost. So that means, I think this back focus might be a little funky too. No, the back, turn off the fluorescence. That's another thing to do with back focus. You turn off the fluorescence. Backlight does do that. It gives separation.
Would fluorescence backlighting
Yeah, it would. You would. But again, if we're using, the only reason I'd suggest to turn on the fluorescence or turn on this up here is if you have this big flood right here, is if you have a lot of people. So you're not going to be, if you have a lot of people, you're not going to be able to backlight everybody. Okay? You might, and if it's, I don't know how it's set up when you guys do it, but a flat table or whatever, you could try, yeah, sure, backlight would help, a little bit. It's all right, it might be a little off color. It'll be a lot warmer color, which is usually fine. It's always nice to warm things up. Basically, what would happen if we turned on these lights right now, you probably couldn't see them, but it'll be warm. Yeah, this one's. There we go. So yeah, it does help, and see how that does give a little bit of separation, but it's a little too much. But then again, that's something that you can mess around. These things have floods and spots on them. Basically, a flood is it's gonna widen your thing up so your light isn't that harsh, and if it's still harsh, you can. I think there's a scrim in there. A scrim looks like.
That's a little one.
Yeah, this is a little one that goes with these low light kits. Put that in there, knocks it down. Those are for the Fresnels, the big ones. Knocks it down. Speaking of which, if we're talking about scrims, still talking about it, people might wonder what this half scrim is for. You're doing your direct lighting. What this does, let's say that someone has on a white t-shirt and they have dark skin, and you're lighting them like you, right there. Your white t-shirt on, we're trying to light you. What this will do is knock down the light that goes on the t-shirt and keep the light on the face. So you can knock down your light. It's basically a half and half. You'll mess around with it, but you can see what happens. And so what it does is it knocks down so the t-shirt isn't overblown to the face. And that's what these half scrims are used for, or vice versa. If the person has a really dark shirt on and they have a real pale face, you can turn it around and do the same thing and light up so your picture basically doesn't get all muddied out, basically, which with video happens a lot. It doesn't hold as much as film, your contrast ratio. So that's what the half filter is used for.
Scott, is there some reason to keep this up in here? We were using it quite a bit before we got the new Fresnel. But we've talked about just taking this down and putting it away and using it in a vertical situation if it's intense.
Yeah, that's really, maybe a thing that you could do. I don't know, you probably have thousands in there, 2000s. Yeah, well, maybe you could still use it. Maybe just switch off and put like maybe a 500 in there, or just put 1 in there, because it is really bright. Another thing, when you guys are using studio, when I do my lighting, what I do is I start off with my iris, or I try to, as much as possible, have my iris all the way open, and then I start my lighting from there.
And then you move down to what you want.
Well, I find with a lot of what I do, we'll go over your iris setting. If your iris is closed, basically that means that the light that's coming through the camera is like a really tiny hole like this. So what that does is it gives you pretty much an infinite depth of field. It means pretty much everything is going to be in focus. When you have your iris all the way open, that means your depth of field shuts down, sinks. And so you don't have, you have certain fields that are in focus that you work with the camera. And what that does, basically, that's another thing of making people focus on your subject. There's other things, if you're fully open, and it depends on your shot and everything, but if you're fully open, then there's going to be things in the background that are going to be in focus and it's going to distract the viewer. When you have it all the way down, or all the way open, things are going to be really blurry in the background. Number one, it focuses more on what the viewer is going to be looking at. Number two, it's going to give more of that dimensionality, three-dimensional aspect that you want. You don't want that cardboard look, cutout look. It gives more of a three-dimensional look. And so I start off with my iris all the way open.
Right now we have it all the way open.
Yeah, 1.4, which is great. I have it all the way open, and I usually start off lighting with my backlight. Get my backlight set up. Get it. So my iris is all the way open. My backlight's set up. Wow, it's too harsh. I can knock it down with either of those things that I pulled out, the scrims, or if you're using field lighting, you can use this stuff. Basically, you want to, yeah, basically you cut this stuff up and make it about the size as this, but this is a diffusion. It knocks it down. And then I go to my front lighting. And again, I won't really talk about three-point lighting. You guys can ask me about it if you want, but since the way these light kits are set up, I'd go more with the two-point lighting, which is back and front. Directly in front, like if you're set up in a library, let's say, or someone's house, you put your camera up and you put your light right in front of the camera, because basically most of the time it depends on what they're going to do, or where the person is going to look at it. If your person isn't going to be directing the camera, you're going to put the light where they're going to be directing. If they're going to be looking over here and not looking at the camera, then that's where you put the light. Same thing with the backlight. Okay, does that make sense to you guys? Okay. Let's say that we're directing you at the camera. If you're looking at the camera, wherever your subject is looking, that's where you want to put the light, because then you won't get those harsh shadows that we're talking about. If the light's coming straight on in front of the person, yeah, we'll set these up in here in a second. We'll turn off these lights. Yeah, let's kill those fluorescents.
There's a power strip right
Okay. Now this is where we'll get into the, and there you go, there's your silhouette lighting. You know, if you have if you don't want to show your person, there it is. Yeah. Okay, silhouette.
Looks like you're being pushed out of your seat.
And then another way of doing silhouette lighting is not light the subject at all, but just light the background. Again, does the same thing. Silhouette lighting. Okay. Now this might be a little harsh, and I'll have to mess around with. Okay, you guys just watch the monitor here. Is this the right one?
Do you want this tight shot?
Yeah, let's go for the tight shot. Okay, watch your eyes there. Ooh. Okay.
Now
No.
are you on full flood there?
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna get my, again, another thing, you guys probably have worked with lights enough before that you know that gloves are of the utmost importance when you're working. Is this television kind of hard? You're kind of looking in the light, huh? Okay. Let's see, how can we do this without? Again, we're getting a little bit of bounce here. You can see he's kind of lit up there. Okay. Now, again, with these lights, you really have to watch out with the barn doors. They get hot, and they don't really stay on too well, and they have a tendency to fall down. So if you're doing anything out in public in a high-traffic area, I'd really suggest that you tape down your lights and watch them at all times so no one trips over them. Because or have someone right. Yeah, that's the best thing. Have someone right by it. Okay. Now, right now, if you guys can see that, I don't know. It's probably you're getting light spilling on the background there. Easy way to take care of that is raise your light up. Or, and if that doesn't get it off the background, you move your subject closer or away from the background. See, it's a little bit.
But you're on the spot, though. Why do you want to spot it?
It doesn't. That's totally flooded. Spot.
Is it?
Yeah, that's totally flooded. I'm halfway. Basically, what I'm doing, and something they tell you not to do, but we always have a monitor, and I usually use my monitor, and I hardly ever look in my viewfinder, which you guys should do because sometimes you might not know if your monitor is right, but always use your zebra bars as your light meter. You guys know what zebra bars are? We don't use them there? I'd suggest that you always have your cameras with the zebra bars on, because basically what that does, when you see zebra bars, basically that means your shot's getting overexposed. And another way of telling, which sometimes can be kind of hard because people mess around with the brightness and contrast on the viewfinder.
So you leave those on the whole time?
Because it doesn't do, zebra bars do not do anything to your final product. What they're basically doing is telling you that a place is getting too hot, that it's getting overexposed. So if you have those zebra bars on, and again, it depends on the camera, you'll have to mess around. Basically, we use that as a gauge. In some of our cameras, we bring it up to zebra bars and then we take it down until they all disappear. Or sometimes on one camera it is, so it's just a tiny bit on the subject where they have zebra bars popping on them. With this mic. They should.
And the Panasonic Studio does.
But not your SVHS?
No.
Okay. Getting back to this.
Yeah.
Well, see,
I've
the thing with the studio is the thing that,
you keep them all the time.
right, the thing that makes the biggest thing in the studio is you got the best tool of all to tell you if you're underexposed or overexposed, and that's your waveform monitor back there. Which you always, the best thing is to have your video at 100% on your waveform monitor, and your black level at between 7 and 10, 7 and 10%. And that is the best for videotape, basically, what it can hold. If you go over 100%, what's going to happen is in a generation loss, it's going to get that whatever is overexposed is going to be totally lost, and whatever is underexposed is going to be totally lost. And so what that waveform monitor does is tell you that you're okay, and through another generation you're not going to lose anything. And that, I don't know if you might have noticed that when you've shot stuff and it's been overexposed and you go into the edit bay and you go drop it, put it down another generation, that it just gets muddied out. Most of the time that's because your stuff is overexposed or underexposed. So when you do stuff in the studio, go ahead and ask Laura or Andy about using the waveform monitor, and you just control your iris from back there in the studio and get it until it's 100%.
There's one set up in Edit 2 as well.
Okay.
To monitor that.
Okay, now direct light, and here I'll try to show you guys as far as setting up for your subject.
These are not always available in the studio here.
Right. This is for field lighting, basically. Your backlight, of course, you're not going to have one hanging up, but your backlight, most of the time, how you shoot, you might have to put it off to the side of your shot because you can't get it high enough where the light will be in the shot. Because what I've told you with studio lighting is you want to usually have your backlight directly behind your subject. In the studio, but in the field it's the same thing, but what's going to happen is if you put your backlight directly behind your subject, it's going to be in the shot, right? So what you do is, what we usually do is we cheat our subject You know, instead of being, and it looks better on television, instead of being shoulders square to the TV, you cheat their body one way or the other. And that enables you, number one, it usually looks a lot nicer on television instead of being square to the camera. It also enables you to put a backlight off frame. And then you can hit it. And then basically, to make this easy to understand, always point your backlight directly at the base of the person's neck so it floods over. It gets the shoulders, and it's always nice too to get the top of the head. So just cheat them a little bit, you know, away from camera. They're still looking at the camera if you want them to look at the camera, but they're not squared up to the camera. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody?
You want them as high as possible?
It depends. Yeah. Another thing is when you're whoops. Well, I'll just barn door this thing down. Another thing is, you know, I'm setting up shots, and let's see, get them away. Shallow. I'm always going to say shallow depth of field is the best.
Say that again?
Is that right? Shallow depth of field. You minimal. You want your subject in focus. You want everything else out of focus,
Yeah.
or whatever you want people to focus on. You want on focus, and everything else out of.
Down as far as you can. Get away with it.
Or all the way open.
out.
All the way open. If you're it's confusing. Think of it opposite. Your f-stop is at f16, or your iris is totally closed. Everything is probably going to be,
And then 1.4.
and 1.4. Everything is going to be in focus. If it's at 1.4, your iris is all the way open. It's to the point of letting in all the light, everything. And what that does is shrink your depth of field.
I always think of it, the farther open it is, it's sort of diffusing everything. So my focus is not going to be as apparent as it is small, and it's sort of concentrating the light into one of the people. That's how
Yeah, different.
everybody has different ways. That's
Yeah, it is kind of confusing. Just think, the smaller, 16 is small. It's the opposite. 16 is small and everything is focus. 1.8 is big, or 1.4 is big, and only very little is in focus. And for most time, you guys can, for the most part, that is usually the best for shooting subjects or objects.
Okay, well, that's interesting because when I did live session, I had three people focus in front of the room, about half the size of this. So I put the camera up in the corner of the room, the zoom all the way back.
Mm-hmm.
And the more light I could get in there, the better everything was in focus.
Right. See, that's what I'm saying.
And the farther I could pull the f-stop back, and that was kind of without understanding
Mhm.
what I was doing, it was kind of giving me this
Mm-hmm.
weird information.
Out of focus. Well, yeah. See, that's what you said is exactly what I was saying.
Exactly.
If the more light you have, you're gonna have to crank your iris closed. The less light you have,
The field you get, the more things farther apart seem in focus.
right? And what I'm saying, most of the time, for the most part, that's what you don't want, is you only want to be focusing on your subject. This is something that has been let's see if you guys get it. And it was someone told me this, but it has a lot to do with editing and lighting and everything. But the way our human eye works is, like if I tell you to look at that clock, all right, you look at that clock. Okay, you guys looked right at the clock, but what happens when you have the camera look at the clock? The camera's going to pick up, it might tilt up, it's going to pick up the floor, it's going to pick up the wall, and then it's going to go to the clock. See, so that is all this useless information that you don't need to give to the public. So instead of doing a zoom down in on the floor, basically what you're doing is probably going to get a tight shot on the clock, right? Because that's what your eyes do. When you look at the light switch, you're not looking at the wall boards or everything around it. Your brain focuses in on the light switch. And so that's what you want to do with the camera, is you want to make people focus in. Because in your mind, you're going, hey, I want people to look at this basketball or this soccer ball or this shoe. And you have a wide shot. And your brain is going, wow, that shoe, that's great. That shoe, that's what I want people to look at. And there's all this other stuff in there. Someone else looks at it and goes, wow, look at that cat over there. No, but I want you to look at the shoe, you know, because it's a television screen and it picks up everything. Where,
When you're doing shots like, I'm just kind of wondering because I don't look at these, but where the shot is kind of taken in a scenic place,
mm-hmm.
is it better to just keep that stuff that's scenic suggested by keeping it out of focus, or is it better to bring it into focus so that the person is actually understanding?
If you watch, if you guys ever, you know, go ahead and really look at movies as far as how they're shot. It comes into when you're doing something like that, you do an establishing shot, right? Which is the big shot. You know, it shows the park with the playground with the kids playing in it, and then the mom and the dad talking, and you hear them talking, and then you cut to a close-up shot, and usually it's out of focus. You don't see the kids. You see the kids, you know, in the background, but they're way out of focus. But you're focusing on the parent. So you are God with the camera. Okay, you are God. You control. You want to direct the eye to what you're trying to get across. So establishing shot is you show the playground, everything's in focus. The kids are going around. You hear it. You know, you have your gnat sounds of swing set, blah blah blah, and then you hear mom and dad talking about what should we do with Joey, who's been real bad, and then you know cut to mom talking, and it's a close up, and she's in focus and might be over the shoulder, and everything else is out in focus, and now you're on that subject in it, and you've already set up your shot. Everything's in focus. Usually you do set it up. You know, you set it up not only with lighting, with you know the way you shoot it, but with gnat sounds too, audio. You know, I can't stress how important gnat sounds are for stuff. You know, even if they're fake, even if you have to put them in there. You know, birds. Just so you're God. You're setting up a feeling. You're setting up what you want to get across to your viewer. Any other questions on that? Yeah, we were originally on this light, and it's kind of bothering you guys. So maybe if this hits you in the eye, you guys can like move out of the way. And if you don't want to be subject, we can get someone else in there too, so you can look at it. You're fine with that? You want to be in? You want to be in there? You want it?
I mean, just so I can see what.
Right. Does anybody else? He's been in the hot seat here for a bit. Okay. Yeah.
I guess everybody already knows, but what's an f-stop?
Okay.
Yeah, what is an f-stop?
I don't know what an f-stop is. Okay. An f-stop is that's photography use of a camera. What you're going to use in video, it's called an iris. An iris is something that controls the amount of light that goes into the videotape. Okay. So it's basically you might even be able to see it when
I know how irises work. I just
Basically,
Right.
never.
it's this. Right now,
Right.
we don't have much light. So,
right.
you know, I'm shutting down the iris and I'm opening up the iris to the situation.
Yeah. But f-stop's the same thing.
Corresponds to numbers.
Right.
And depth of field too.
And depth. Well, and that has a yeah.
It's a property of how
Right.
much light comes in or how.
And as far as photography goes, and this goes, there are certain things. What the numbers are used for is you can tell on cameras, and I'm not sure on video. I think you can on video cameras too. But you can actually gauge how much is going to be in focus. When your iris is when your iris is closed, or your f-stop is at C, your focus is at infinity. It'll have a little infinity thing there. When your iris is all the way open, or f-stop, it's pretty much the same thing. It's just a different usage. For photography, it's called an f-stop. For video, it's called an iris. And in movies, I don't know what they use for it, but basically, it's the same exact thing. When it's all the way open, there it says 1.4, and it's going to say you have 2 feet from point of focus that are going to be in focus. Okay. When you go to like 5, 6, it's going to say you have 10 feet that are going to be in focus from your point of focus. That basically means that from right here to 10 feet this way, it's going to be in focus, to 10 feet behind the person is going to be in focus.
There's a monitor in the viewfinder that tells you
No, no.
You
What
can see that on our lens here.
it's
With
it's
the focal ring and the iris ring.
right on the iris ring. It's right here, and it's something that I'm not really. I just wing it. I just look at it. Basically, we don't want to get too much into that because it gets really confusing. It confuses me too.
It's not anything to do with how much light is on the subject itself.
Right.
That's what I was gonna tell you,
Yeah.
is that your depth of field changes with the amount
And
of
of
light
light.
that you have on the scene. And what you're trying to do in lighting a scene is get what will work for you, for the depth of field. So whatever
Yeah.
you wanna have,
Right.
you know, if you have a performance of some kind, it's a very wide shot, you know, you just wanna make sure that you have enough of the action. If you have too little light, there's no depth of field
Right.
basically.
Right. There's
I mean,
no
you
depth of
can't
field.
get it in focus.
Right. And so if you're doing a wide shot, and like if you're shooting a drama department play, and it's on a wide shot, you want everything to be in focus, and so you want as much light as possible on it, so you can close down your iris. Okay. Go to the close. The only thing that you need to remember is when your iris is all the way open is the lower number, 1.5, whatever, 1.4, 1.4 on this camera. But when it's all the way open, that means that from the point of focus that you're going to be focusing on, there's only going to be a little bit that's going to be focused. Everything else is going to be out of focus. If it's closed up to 16 or
But if you have a lot of light and then you don't need it open all the way, right?
you can't if you have a lot of light, you can't have it open all the way, because what's going to happen is your video is going to be blown out. So basically in the outdoors, you can't control it that much unless you have thousands upon thousands of dollars to control it. You're under whatever the sun does. So you're going to be, most of the time it's going to be closed under direct sunlight. Your iris is going to be always closed, and everything's going to be in focus. Okay?
The same way your eye works.
The same way your eye
Too
works.
much light and your iris closed within your eye. You know, it's that same reaction.
Right.
Iris opens more, it's less light. It's the same.
That's why I found that interesting. You said you start at an open iris.
Yeah, well, because I'm always
You don't want that depth of field. You want specific pinpoints of subject.
right. I want
Yeah.
because in cinematography and television, the more you look at it, you're going to notice that they direct you into what they want you to see. Except for, they'll establish a shot where everything's in focus, but then they'll go into, again, I can't stress it enough. We could go on hours, but close up, close up, close up, close up. You want that person, you want that viewer to be looking at what you want them to look at, and so make them look at what you want to look at, whether it's, with your focal length, whether it is being extreme close up. If I get extremely close up, and it goes a lot with emotion too. If I get extremely close up on his face, I'm breaking right there. That shot is, they use that as like, I'm breaking right there. I'm breaking the interpersonal role right there. I'm in close there, right there. That sets an emotion for the viewer. That's like, wow, I'm deep at thought. I'm hard thinking. This is something that's, it's really tough. It's the viewer is looking right there.
Yeah, well, you make the viewer
You make
in
the
their space, so to speak.
right. You set it up for the viewer. That's why I'm saying, you're basically, you control it. A little wider out there. Now it's more at a friendly, comfortable zone. So again, that is something that you control and do it. Use it. Don't be afraid to get close up in on it. Even when you're shooting people you don't know, they're not going to see it. They might get pissed off at you later on, but
But is
but
that what you want?
but if that's
Especially with a canyon, though. Just want to keep the monitor turned away from the subject.
oh, at all times, always. They watch it, and they're not going to.
You could see their eyes on the monitor.
And that's another thing. You always want eye contact with either your camera or right off camera. You don't. I do it a lot when I talk to people, just because I got such a friggin' high metabolism. It's like I'm at a bar and people are talking. They're talking to me, and I'm like looking over there and going, oh, hey, hey, and then, hey, are you paying attention to me? Yeah, no, I'm listening to what you're saying. Well, that's the same thing that happens on television. Person's looking off camera, then you're going, well, what's going on over there? I can't see what's going on over there. And they're looking at themselves in the monitor, and they're like, oh. So you always want them to be focused on one single thing.
And I don't care what they tell you, they're always looking at that monitor.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, never.
They want to see themselves. They want to see what's going on.
Even in that's, yeah, people never ever get to see themselves in the monitor, because they'll, even when you're shooting people, because sometimes they'll go, oh, I look terrible, and they might be they look great, but they're gonna say I look terrible, and you're gonna go, well, okay, go ahead and make yourself up and everything, and then at that point you turn the monitor away so they don't see themselves, and they go, how do I look now? And nothing's changed. You go, you look great. Let's go.
That's one less thing that you need to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't
Plus,
let
of
'em
course,
see
it's
it.
Andy's talk show. They use the monitor to
Well,
direct the show.
that's
Right. Well, and that's different because you're working. I mean, and news, they do that too. But it's basically they're used to their selves. They know where they have to look. They know they're not supposed to be looking at another place. So, but when you're dealing with people who don't know that, it's human. It's human to look at yourself and go, hey, wait a minute. No, look at the monitor. What? Look at the no. Look at the monitor. No, look at the camera.
I
What?
notice that you're doing that a lot.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're just so yeah, everybody does it.
I bet.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite f-stop for inside?
Yeah, 1-4. All the way open. I mean, because with the close-up, well, it depends on, 2-shot or whatever, but basically even when we're shooting product, which sometimes we're not able to do, I like to have, I always like to have that depth of field, because basically it gives that three-dimensional aspect to it. It makes your television not, have you guys ever seen those, like some of the local news where they interview someone and the guy is up against the wall, and then you see that like a harsh shadow back there, and you're going, and besides them being green, yeah, or they're up against the wall, and it looks like they're part of the wall, basically. And for me, and it's probably, maybe it's just me because I'm in this business, but I'm like, I'm looking at the wall. I'm looking at the wall. I'm not paying attention to the person. No, what you do is basically you never, ever, ever put, when you're shooting anybody, you want to get them as far away from the wall as possible.
And then decrease your depth of field.
And I leave my iris all the way open, which is 1-4, and then adjust my lights accordingly from there. And I might have to go down a bit, but I'm always, always, always have my iris all the way open. And another thing, like if you're out in direct sunlight and you can't do it and you're closed, what you can do is always use a tripod. Always use a tripod. And move your camera as far away as possible from your subject as you can, and until you can zoom in and get whatever shot it is on them. That also will decrease your depth of field, because your camera is having to make up, when you zoom in, your camera is having to make up all that area, so it is gonna get stuff out of focus. So again, like I said at the start, it might sound like I'm going back and forth and stuff, but that's just the way it is.
Do you get a clear picture on the Zoom?
Oh yeah, and if you have a tripod, it doesn't matter. If you don't have a tripod, and you don't have a tripod and you're having to do handheld stuff, you never ever want to be zoomed in all the way, because when you're zoomed in all the way, everything's going to look like it's in an earthquake and you're really shaky. Every tiny single move that you make is going to be exaggerated because you're zoomed in on the person. If you have to do handheld, you want to be all the way out, zoomed all the way out, and then you're close in on the person. And then when you're zoomed out all the way, then it's not going to be as shaky, and it'll be a little bit. But I always strongly, unless you have to, unless it's the look that you're looking for, always use a tripod. And if it is the look you're looking for, do it all the way open and get in that person's face or in that subject's face and have your zoom all the way out, because when you're looking through that thing and you're going, okay, that's what I want, shaky, then you get in the edit suite and you go, whoa, this is really shaky. You know, it's hard to have, yeah.
In the studio, what's the ideal height for front lighting? Should we use the standard light that you use in panels, or is there better off
In the studio, it's rule of thumb is 45-degree angles on everything. 45, 45, 45. Yeah, it's like that. You know, it's pretty good. That's about right. If I moved him closer and I brought it down, what would happen is I would lose the eyes. I'd start to get shadows in the eye. You know, and again, see, the thing with lighting too is, you know, I'm telling you these things, and you're basically going to have to improvise with people. Because different people, I have really deep set eyes, so I'm really hard to light. The way to light me is I don't look good with the light coming from up above. I look better with the light coming straight on me, so I can get into my eyes. You know, so it can fill in there, so it doesn't look like a dark space. You know, everybody's a snowflake, so you're just going to have to mess around with it. But basically, basically a 45-degree angle. Yeah, write that down. 45-degree and 45-degree. Now, another good thing, now that you mentioned it, glasses are always interesting. You know, go ahead and put your glasses on there. Now,
That's way better now.
Is that for these lights are not designed to be on for 4 to 5 hours.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a good point.
Some of these folks are doing long
right.
productions.
And we're having problems
These
with them.
these new treater Fresnels, we got it specifically because they're
Mhm.
designed to be on longer.
Yeah.
And the larger ones, well, there's several different types of Fresnels, but the largest Fresnel lights, the ones that are like the one that is on, we got those specifically
For
because we were burning out light for anything that was above 4 hours at a time. It turns out that all of our smaller lights, because we didn't know when we bought them, were really designed only to be that way. Same thing with portable lights, even less. So that's just to be really thinking. Yeah, and what I suggested to some folks doing longer shows, because they shoot, a full day, is after 4 hours you either really need to take a break or have a second set of glasses and hop on and turn those things.
I always take a break for lunch.
Yeah. Now, again, and if you're doing stuff like this, I have
Now,
my
these aren't really good glasses, but they look cool
right.
under
They
the
look
light.
cool. Well, what I'm trying to do.
They're cooler as crack dealing, you know? I
But
don't
no,
know
you know what? Mine have anti-reflective.
Okay, that's what I'm getting across here now.
Hey,
Reflection.
You're cool, Mary. You got anti-reflection?
Really, they,
You always get that reflection of the light there. How to get away from it? All you have to do is basically see how that reflection of the light's in his face. You just raise your light up, and
and get them to pull it down on their nose.
and then if that doesn't do it, then you cheat the glasses and get it down, and that's how you get away from it, because sometimes that could be. You look good.
Gloves too. That's
Um,
Send money, you guys. Okay,
yeah, it's taping.
That's how you get away from that. That's how you get away from that look. Get away from. Whoops. There you go.
What happened?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
that was
goes.
a big problem.
Breaks and
Big
everything.
problem.
And that's another thing.
Back up.
I kind of did. That's something that you also have to learn. I do it all the time. I get all wigged out and I start messing around with lights. But always let your lights cool down before you move them, because it's really easy for the bulbs to bust. And with these lights.
Happened, or did it burn out?
No, well, I think what happened is, since it was on for a while, also you got to be really careful when you do the spot and flood, because just even the slight, especially these lights they're good lights, but they have some shortcomings, which is, one, the barn doors are really flimsy, and number two is your thing right here, sometimes it gets stuck, and that does happen a lot. So you really have to watch out with moving your spot and your flood.
Let it cool down. I'll change it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you'd really be better off with a
Yeah.
We went through that in here.
That's another thing.
Half circle, we did
Half
deep.
I
He got stuck
Yeah.
people out.
That's
So it really
that's tough. You always want to try to get a U.
Bad for in here. I was pretty surprised.
Right. Well, I guess it depends on how you shoot. The problem is
We're
when you
shooting
have
between people's heads across the table from each other.
right when you have that rectangular table. Was it set up lengthways like this, or were you set up
Set up across from the corner here, actually. So
like
we've got
that? So you had cameras on both sides. Yeah, that's not too bad then. A U shape is usually the best though, because you can then, as far as camera, you can move around, get shots, and also people aren't squared up to the camera. That is always kind of a okay. Now I'll just go kind of. We'll try to get. We've been.
Well, that one seems brighter. That must
That is
have
a
a
crack
higher.
to it.
That might be 1,000.
No, I don't think it's 1,000.
They don't take it.
Probably 7.
750, and the other one's 500.
Is there any reason why you would want to light it from below?
Yeah, well, if you light from low, what you're gonna do is you're gonna get like a really ominous effect. So all your shadows are gonna go up, and you're gonna. If you light it from below, it's gonna cast your shadows upwards, what looks unnatural. So it's gonna give it an unnatural feeling, basically. One of power. It's kind of also as far as I don't know if you guys have gone through camera angles and everything. And the best camera angle to have is directly on the axis of your person. Like this camera should, right? This camera should actually be down a little lower for shooting all you guys. But again, with the low light, low camera angle, looking up, it's like a sense of power. It's like, hey, I'm big. You can control that. So again, with lighting, there's many avenues to go for stuff, and for mood lighting too. 3-point lighting works out. Like right now, I'm evenly lighting the space, and let's forget that I'm putting light on the back there, but we'll just say that usually you don't want the light in the back there. Right now, I'm kind of directly lighting the space. You can go ahead and you can have the glasses on. If you see, if I move my light over
So now,
this
now,
way.
did I get that right? That the rule of thumb is.
Yeah, well then it gives more depth there. Now that's more of a mood lighting again. That's kind of like
But didn't you say that
Uh-huh.
for that type of lighting, you put it wherever the person is looking?
right. Well, and that's something.
That's the general rule.
That's a general rule. And right now we're kind of getting out of it. I'm showing you. Go ahead. You can mess around. You can mess around with this, as much. Hey, what's your name? Dick. Go ahead and come forward for me. Come. Yeah, with the chair. So right. Okay. Okay. Now I'm not going to have a backlight on you, but that's. Go ahead and move back. Half a distance. Right there. There we go. Get a little bit of there. Where are you? There you are. Okay. Now.
Yeah.
Checks in the mail.
Okay. Now again, lighting. You can go infinite ways. Now this is a little.
No, it's like right down the middle.
This is right down the middle, and that's how you get it. But what's going to happen this might be all right for a live thing, but if you're going to edit suite, what's going to happen is this is going to be gone. It's going to be muddy. It's going to be gone. So what you have to do there is
But what if you have a two-camera shoot even in live, and you have a camera set over there, and it looks like this, very nice.
Mhm.
Your director goes to camera 2 over here, and all of a sudden
it's gone.
you got a totally
You got a totally different
different situation.
situation,
You
and
gotta
that's
think ahead a
that's
little.
choreographing, right? And that's certain things that you're going to have. That's why,
So I've seen that quite often.
right? That
Lighting's perfect with one camera, but
Right.
not with the other.
which is another reason for it that's pretty tough. What I don't want to get into the 7 things, but if you're doing 2 or 3 people, usually what you do is you set your cameras up where you want them. They're probably going to be like cross angle, like you have a camera here, it's going to be shooting people over there. You're going to have your second camera here, shooting the people over there, right? And your third camera here for your wide shot. So what you do is you have your camera set up, then you light from there. Do your backlights, sit someone down in that chair over there, for this camera, have them look at this camera. Backlight would go right over there. Front light would go right here for those people there. Same thing here. Backlight over here. Front light over here. And then hopefully everything, it'll be fine when they're looking this way. Because yeah, it should be all right. If not, you can add another light. Yeah.
So what you're saying in a setting like that, you should probably have, there shouldn't be a middle. You know what I'm saying? A person in the middle. You have everything coming.
Right. Well, you know.
Because then you would have to do one in the front. Right? Would that bother?
That would bother. I see what you're saying.
Let's say there were 3 people in.
3 people.
We should do a setup maybe.
Okay, yeah, if you guys want to do a setup, we can do a setup and I can show you.
A lot of people do use this room
Okay.
in an interview situation.
Well, yeah, once you guys set up in a typical interview situation, and I'll just kind of show you maybe where the lights would go, because basically, you know, for interviewer, usually I think interviewer is in the middle and you have the 2 people on either side, right? Okay.
We'll
Right.
use stuff right behind here.
You use the round table
Yeah,
then, or?
use the round. Hey, Scott, I have one more question.
Uh-huh.
How many lights do you think Ken Burns uses for his interview shot?
Not many.
Who's Ken Burns? I don't watch, you know, that's another thing. I don't really watch that much television.
Well, you know, he did the Civil War.
Oh.
You know, that
Oh,
kind
yeah,
of
those are odd. See, that's, I don't even want to get into.
He brings his own background.
Yeah.
And I heard from Rick Kushel, who worked with him in recording,
Mm-hmm.
that he used this big soft light.
Yeah, but he doesn't, what they do,
But I can't figure that out. So, 'cause
What
it
they
looks
do.
like a blend
what they
between
do
diffuse and
is they have the interviewer like right there. That's cameras right there. They put, it's kind of like a light like this. It's kind of like a soft light like this, but it has like a white sheet in front of it,
right.
and they put it directly to the side of the person. So you have that light hitting here, and then they put a bounce over on this side,
So they use
like a bounce
Like
or a
that.
flex, or even if that doesn't work, you know, depending on the skin tone of the person, or they just put it like. That's a quarter of what is over here, basically.
We have a rectangular table here. Could we grab that? Yeah. Does that be fast?
You know, the aspect is most of the time, whenever I do my show, I typically usually in the middle, and there's 2
Yeah, 2
people
people on either side.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, every now and then, there'll be 4 of us, but then, total, but there's never any more
Right.
than that.
Yeah. See, now that's the ideal interview. So, you know, you get into more people, then it's like, you know, cameras and everything else. It's tough. And so what you do usually is you cross your cameras, right? So like the person sitting over there, then you have your camera going that way, and then the other camera going that way. Okay, yeah, that's the way you should have it.
But as far as the lighting, should this, so for the person in the middle, should there still be a light here and one on there?
Yeah, you should, like I said, it's always good to have a light
So
on
it should be a
everybody.
light, okay, yeah, all right.
Because even if you're turning over to because your nature of it is you're going to be talking to the person you're talking to. So when you turn over there, you're going to get some of that light. It's cute for them.
Yeah, you can do it like that.
Right. Which is fine. So the basic thing is what you do is you try to make the light as even as possible, so that it isn't like harsh on one. So all your front lights you want to have the same evenness. So one isn't too hot. You want them all the same. So it doesn't matter if you go into that person's light.
It's the same.
These are the same light.
You have anti-reflective? Yeah. Okay, turn off the fluorescent.
Okay. Now.
Yeah, that's okay. That's because we have it on manual, so we're going to open it up.
The truth is
I have it set up right now. This way I don't have to get up and move my stand.
Okay. Now for this, what I would do if you're having a 3-person shoot like this, first thing I would do is, and let's say it's a smaller table, what I would do is move people away from that as much as possible, away from your back, away from the back wall, backdrop. So, yeah.
Even in a small place like this?
even in a small place like this, because what's going to happen is once you start lighting your subjects, you're going to get some on your backdrop. And what you're going to try to do is try to keep your light off your backdrop as much as possible. And if you want light on your backdrop, you can put another light there if you want to, like a little slash light with another light if you want to. If you want to show something so they're not like floating in total blackness. You know, those are, if you don't want that look, you can put another light back there, you know, like a slash back there with a colored gel, and then you'll still have that depth there, but it won't be the shadow of someone's head going like this, basically. So first thing I do is move them forward.
So should we move them forward?
Yeah, let's go ahead and move them forward. Yeah. And
Well, that's a common mistake then we've
Yeah.
all been doing, right?
you know, I'd move them as far away from the backdrop as possible. And of course, you probably have to, you know, make room in the studio so you can get your
cameras, you run out of room.
right. You run out of room really quickly. So
Can we use that backlight if we open the barn doors? We could probably get 2 out of that, yes?
yeah, you could probably, because that's another thing you're gonna run into. I try to.
So how would you backlight me and how would you backlight Gwen?
I'd put, which is kind of hard. You could probably do it right there. I don't know if it's.
Way more than 45 degrees though.
Well, that's all right. Basically, let's see. This is probably too much. Basically, what I would want to do. See, the problem is now is what's going to happen is Gwen for this camera right here. She's going to be blown out on this side. So what I'd always try to see, that's what's going to happen when you're talking about doing different camera angles. What I try to do is single my backlight for each person. So basically, I'd put a backlight for you right here, back here, at a 45. For Gwen, same thing. I put a backlight as far as I could back here, directly behind her, and it would basically be directed. You know, that's what barn doors are for, and that's what these lights are great for, is you can control where your light goes. I'd shut my barn doors so they'd just be falling on her back. For you, should be a little tougher in the studio. I'd put it, yeah, I'd put one right here, and see, the problem is you probably start running out of lights here. So maybe I'd go back on this situation with the lighting. Well, actually, no. You could still do it. You could use these little tiny lights here for your backlights too. Okay, it's all right if you just pop them a little bit. Use this light. You know, you could use this light right here as a backlight, and you could put it. I don't know. Can you hang a light right? No, you could probably hang a light. And again,
That's
for
what I was wondering about is bars going down the wall to slide around. So you can mount lights down the wall in case needed.
well, the problem is you got these things here for sound, so you run into problems there. But the way this is also set up, you'd also probably, you know, you'd be facing more like this, because in an interview situation, you guys know that it's going to be you're talking for the camera, so you're faking it. So most of the time, you're going to be looking.
Well, that's an interesting thing, Scott, because in all 3 of mine, that is not the case whatsoever.
Right. Really? Well, it's hard for you to do that.
Discussion training.
Okay.
Discussion training. No one looks at the camera. People look at each other.
Okay.
Converse about a subject, and then a trainer
Okay.
will address, I guess, the group.
Well, okay. If you're looking at basically like what I was telling you, you know, what would happen is you're going to run out of lighting options here. I would basically maybe just use one light back here, and I wouldn't do it like I started off saying you want your backlight stronger than your front lights. What would happen in this case, I would probably try to bring my backlight down so it's kind of measured with the front light. And why? Okay. Well, see what's going to happen here is, since and it's probably true with a lot of stuff that you do here, is people aren't going to be addressing the camera, they're going to be addressing each other, right? So you're going to have a lot of over-the-shoulder shots and everything. So what happens is they might be like for you right here, you're going to be looking over here and you're going to be looking over there, right? So for my front light, I would want that, and you can get away with this. I could use my her backlight for his front light.
I mean, that's what we did.
Okay.
That's exactly why we sat on that,
Right.
so that people could share cross cube lighting.
And I would again start with my iris all the way open, so you don't have really harsh shadows going on as far as falling on the table. And that has another thing to do with your the way your tripod is. You know, you want to have it down so it's looking direct, so you don't see the table too much. You're just seeing the people, so you don't have to worry about what's going on down here.
So these cameras don't go down low enough, I guess.
Yeah, they were raised for safety.
You got spreaders right here. Or do these spread out? No.
No, these are out all the way, but
Okay.
I could bring them down another 5 or 6 inches
Okay.
right here, so that would be perfect.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah, Larry.
perfect.
Yeah.
I would like to see that, because it seems like when they were all the way down, it's still, oh God, it really does change.
Oh yeah, it's amazing how.
Scott, what do we need if we have, I mean, we just made the investing in these
Mhm.
theaters for now, because I think already has included our
yeah.
lighting.
Mhm.
What would we order? We're willing to get more lights. I mean, should we get some littler backlight kinds of things? Or better
Um,
grid system?
A better,
Something better grid
probably
system, yeah.
a better grid system, and also I know you guys have been. I don't know how it's worked out with. I mean, the way the studio is set up, it's kind of tough to get a lot of
It's
people
really
in
hard.
here because you
Yeah.
don't have enough room. You're fine lengthwise, but when you go sideways, set up for a lot of interviews like you're talking about, you know,
Yeah.
it's really hard to put lights over here, and
If
You know,
we
there's-
had, I actually rented some lights. I wish I could have rented some more. We'd have been okay if we'd had 14 or 16 lights.
yeah.
Pulled it off.
You know, as far as
But then that's too much light. Why want
Yeah,
to
that's
dim
too
them
much
down?
light.
We needed
Right.
all the light. We needed all the directions, but all of them on was too much. We didn't have a dimmer pack. So
Right.
16 lights, 14 lights with a dimmer pack would have worked. But God, that's extremely.
Well, then also, again, what I've always noticed is I mean, it's really tough when you're doing, I mean, that's probably the hardest thing you're ever going to do
Now, if someone
is
goes like
lighting
this,
someone from,
forget it.
right. And
It's
so,
like that much. It's really touchy.
right, and so, I mean, what we have to do, and we got a lot bigger studio, what I do is for a 2-shot and for a 2-camera shot is I start off on one person. You know, I start off in one chair, and I go, okay, and all the axes that first I start off and I do the backlight for that person because you know you're going to turn your head like this and like this, but basically if you set your backlight right here, it's not going to fall over on the face at all. It's not going to hit there, so you're fine on that. It's not going to hit anybody else because you have barn doors. It's going to go right like this. So then I come around and I go, well, the only camera that this person is going to be looking at is going to come over from this side. And it might be from over here to, you know, over here. So what I do is I put a subject down in the chair, and then I start on my way. I go, okay, put a light right there, and I light for this part over here, for this side of the face. And I don't worry about the other side of the face. Then I come over, and you guys don't have enough lights for this, but I'm just telling you this is the ideal thing to do. Then I put another light for over here. This comes down to your 3-point lighting.
That's 3 points,
And
right.
and I try to even it out. It doesn't have to be totally even, but you don't want it totally harsh. I try to even it out as much as possible. And so wherever that person turns, he or she's going to be lit.
We had one of our presenters that ended up with a Hitler mustache right here.
Right.
It was, you're thinking, oh, it's not too picky. It was pretty extreme.
But then again, you know, that's also, you know, with cameras like this, that also goes with the harshness of your light. You don't need,
Yeah,
you
with
don't,
more light than we needed.
Yeah,
we
you-
could have turned it down.
yeah, just, and to turn it down,
Touch spun was a trick.
yeah, tough spun, just use it and dim it down. And then that also makes your shadows fall away. It lightens up. Basically, you, basically what you do with this stuff is, with these lights, you don't want to put it to this because these things get really hot. You just clip them, you cut it to the area, and you clip them on here. For these, you can even use them for these. Tough spun is made not to burn. Something that I'd invest in that costs $1.50 are clothespins. Use clothespins to pin them on to your barn doors. So basically, if you run out of scrims are what you basically would want to use, are scrims.
Which are a frame that you put tuck spun on, right?
No, scrims
Scrim is
are
the
these
mesh.
the wire mesh things. These things. This is a half scrim.
Are there different types of them that have shut out more light than others? Or more
Yeah, there
than
is.
other?
The thicker these lines are together, the less light's going to go through. The thinner it is, the more light that's going to go through.
How many different kinds do we have? I didn't even know if we have.
I think we just have
we have
one
for
each and a half scrim.
That's all we have.
So, so
There's odds and ends in there, you'd have to just.
Yeah, but they go, different ones fit
right,
really small.
right. So basically, what you can do is get some clothespins, and hey, they might.
Clips.
You have
Actually
clips. Okay, you have clips for them. They might burn up a little bit, but hey, that's okay. If you smell something burn, you just go, I gotta turn off that light and take it down. It's no big deal. It's just a little wood burning.
I've seen them start with fire.
Yeah, well, usually with these, they're use the clips.
In a video,
Well, no, I shouldn't say that, but it's not. The clips also. If they're plastic, you might run into even more problems with them. If they're are they metal clips?
I believe so.
Okay, the metal clips are the best because tough spun is made not to burn. It has a really
Hot, so be careful.
they get always wear gloves, but flood these lights out as much as possible, and then if it's still too bright, then you just put tough spun over it, and you just mess around with it. And a single sheet, when you double is probably all you're going to do. Once you triple, you're just like knocking out massive amounts of light. But then you'll get away from those harsh shadows because basically that just comes from having. When I first started off lighting, I did that. I'd go, oh gosh, I'd have to have light. I'd overlight everything. And
dimmer pack?
no, last time I
dim
used.
lights.
Yeah, last time. Then that's basically what this stuff does.
Right. So
Is
instead
it
of
dims
using
it.
a dimmer, you use this stuff right on the
Right on the light.
itself.
It's dimmers just are a lot more time effective because you can say, all right, that's flooded or that's flooded all the way out, and I'm gonna dim it down
It
from
seems
there.
like you'd be using those because they are so quick and easy.
Yeah, but they're expensive, and what dimmers do also is they lower your Kelvin temperature down. They change the
Right,
color
I
of your
was
light.
wondering about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
when you use tough spun or something, you change your light without changing.
without changing the temperature of your light.
Interesting. I was wondering about that.
See because what a dimmer is going to do is it's going to let less. It's like a dimmer at a dining room or whatever. You've seen those where when they're up all the way, it's like really white light, and then you turn them down, and it's really orange light.
Yep.
So
The color temperature.
so it changes the color temperature. And again, if that ever happens, if you're doing stuff like that, remember to re-white balance again. As far as color temperature goes.
But we don't have that, so.
So getting back to this, basically, I wouldn't worry about shadows that much. And to get away from harsh shadows, what you do is use tough spun. Flood your light out all the way. Use tough spun or a patch over it. And if it's, for me, I'm anal, and so I try to get it on certain things. If that's what I'm looking for, I try to get it as even as possible. It's really tough to do if your eye's not trained for it. You need pretty much a light meter for it. But it's all right if it's a little off, as long as you don't have those really harsh shadows where people are going, wow, that's a really big shadow, or they're looking at the shadow, as long as it doesn't bother you too much. Basically, you just put tough spun on, and it'll loosen your shadows up. So, like the camera's over here, for light, probably put a light here, and a light here, and this could be used for Gwen's backlight. Same thing goes over here. It's pretty much the same exact thing. The camera's, it's pretty much uniform, right? From where you set up the people are going to be turning the same way. Same thing. I can kill two birds with one stone with a backlight for you, part of a light for Gwen here.
So you flood that again.
I'd flood them out because once it's spotted, you get harsher shadows, and in a situation like this is not bad. That's bad because you're trying to focus on the person. You're talking about the Civil War thing. What he's trying to do there is he's setting up he's setting up an emotion with that lighting. That's pretty much a new type of three-point lighting where it's harsh on one side, but he's only having to worry about one single shot. Where in a situation like this, where you're having to worry about a number of different shots going on, so you can kill backlight, front light, right there, and then probably put another light right over here, and if it looks like one side of the face is too hot or is hotter than the other side of the face, easy thing to do there is just a barn door that light away from that person's face. Just move it away. Where if you see the other light hitting it, just move this light away from it so it's just hitting that part of the face. Again, this kind of lighting is the hardest to do you're ever going to do, because you're trying to get so many. You're doing different camera angles, and people are moving, which is always the hardest to do. What they do in television shows these days is they have actually track lighting, and they're all things are choreographed, and the lights are on computer. They're put in computers and they're tracked in, so they're following. The lights are actually following the people around.
Are they following the camera?
No, they're following.
Are they like human sensitive, or are they?
Well, I think what they do is they choreograph out the actors walk a certain way, just like even in the olden days for setting up that, everything was choreographed out for light, and basically with computer track lighting, what it is you don't have to have as many lights to take care of what they did in the olden days, because in the olden days they just set up lights along the way that the people are walking in, and with it now it's choreographed into how, and I'm not sure, to ask you a question, I'm not sure how it's done.
Because one thing I noticed too when we just bought the Peterson mill, we were looking at a bunch of different light catalogs. The studios are lit with what looks like these huge soft lights or these giant square lights now. They're like
Mhm.
net bulbs and
Those
stuff
are.
like that. It looks weird.
That's like a. That's the. That's the middle of diffusion and direct lighting. It's direct to a certain point because it's kind of like this, but it's directed at a certain point, and the light's going out, and it's soft, and it has a nice color, and you still pick up textures. It's not, and you're still getting lines if you want lines. It's just a new type of light, and it's the big thing.
Yeah, it is.
It's the big thing now. Yeah, and that's what everybody uses now. That's what we have, one of those, and it's really nice. But it's kind of in between an umbrella, which is going to throw light all over the place, and a spot.
And are those on boom arms from the ceiling too? So you can what?
No, usually you. I'd say that's another rule of thumb, and this is old school, and things are changing a lot. But usually you set up your lights and you usually never move them. If you watch movies, sometimes what they do.
Not around here.
Well, I mean, for a certain show, you set up your lights and you don't move them during the show.
Right,
Okay.
In order to move those lights and get them where you want, it seems like I see them in studios. Some of them are on these big arms. You can move them around, bring them down.
Oh yeah, definitely. But also in a lot of those studios, and that's a lot done in like an outdoor production, too. But a lot of the times, what they do is they have a really nice grid going, and you just put them on there and you grid, and then like what I was talking about earlier was they have them actually on like little rails that can move back and forth that are on a grid that are moving, and then with the dimmers. But.
Other questions? Or
Yeah, I don't know.
for Scott? I mean, that was just one I know that comes up a lot.
Yeah.
You talked about this earlier. I just wanted to see if you could. I just wanted to show it to me.
Mhm.
You talked about when you're interviewing some person and they're in a building,
Mhm.
to get them away from the wall.
Mhm.
But how do you get it to where you're dealing with two lights? I mean, you explained. I just kind of wanted you to show it to me.
Okay.
To where the light, how you want them to look at the camera, but the light, you know what I'm saying, the two lights.
Oh, okay.
How to get the backlighting on them and the front.
Okay, right. Well, let's do that right since this is closed out. And I'm sorry if I didn't like make too much. This is this situation again is really tough to do, and I hope I tried to explain it as much as possible. Basically, what you're gonna have to mess around with it is, and then we'll get to yours, because that's something that we can actually visually see, which is a lot harder to visually show you this without spending a long time doing it. But don't be afraid, like don't be afraid to use backlight and front light. You're gonna have to improvise. And basically just try to make it as even as possible. Use your monitor, look at it, make sure everything's even, and then you're there. Okay. Now as far as the interview thing goes,
Let's say they're standing.
let's say they're standing up.
Yeah.
Okay, let's pretend they're standing up. Okay, it's the same thing. Okay, let's just use we'll use Gwen here. Okay, what you do is okay. Okay, now that is straight on Gwen right there. Okay.
Okay.
Now what I do is I set up my backlight, which did we change this light
Yeah,
out?
it is.
Okay.
It's ready to go.
Set up the backlight first.
You have to shut down the
Oh, let's wait a second until we get this puppy going here.
Did you get a hairdresser too?
Makeup.
Yeah, really working the makeup. And that's speaking of makeup, that's another good thing when you're interviewing people. I know some guys will go, God, I don't want to put on makeup. You don't have to have them put them on makeup, but when it comes to cameras and lighting, a shiny, oily face, which mine does sometimes, it looks terrible on television. So what you do is you just have them get a paper towel and wipe that off, because if you can see a shine on your face, it's going to show up double or triple on television. Okay, so just always, that's another thing. That's a big rule. Stay away from, because then they're going to thank you afterwards. Once they see themselves on television, they're going, "Oh my gosh, I can't even see my face. All I see is my forehead, and it's shiny." So, yeah, and so always do that. Whoops. Remember to tell them.
Sitting here watching you
That's
trying to
right.
put that in there.
So that's one thing to remember. Whoops. I guess if worst comes to worst, you can do some bad camera stuff, which is focus. Stop them down or focus, and then maybe just get it just a tiny bit out of focus, so it's not. So it's.
Well, some of those really long camera shots that people are discussing, it's very hard to stop them and say.
Okay, Mary, you can turn off that one there. Ideally, what I'm telling you about is you want your light directly behind your subject.
you have it once again between the spot and
I have it flooded all the way out because we have our iris all the way open here. And what I'm going to do, I'll go ahead and cut some of this up here. That's that light. You can tell right there it's a little too harsh because you're losing the definition of her hair. You can see it's blown out.
Somebody was taping this on, it looks like. Where are our oh, there's clips on that.
Yeah, there's clips on there. We're good. So, what I'll do is,
And when you guys are clipping this tough spun, save it, okay? Don't toss it.
yeah, because you can use it over and over
Yeah.
again.
the clips live in this
You'd be
bag
surprised.
in this equipment room studio light
Okay.
vector room.
How much do you want?
That's
You
good
wanna
for
double
now.
it?
And if
Yeah, I'll
we just
double
Oh,
it.
okay.
Because you can always just hang it. That's one thing that we cut.
They should tell us and we'll get some more. But these
I like the clothespin idea. They're a little easier to use.
Yeah, but we don't want no burn.
Yeah, we don't want them to burn in here. We don't want.
I've seen them.
Yeah, if they do, because some of those, with these Fresnels, for the most part, you can with certain. Those barn doors shouldn't get too hot, but I don't want to.
Those.
The course light's really hard.
Okay.
Do you have this at 1.4 right now?
I'm pretty sure. Is that all the way open?
It is.
It's all the way open. So, what I do right here is that. is blocking it, right? Okay, so
Film class?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Can you graph it or put it up or something and show me?
We'll shoot for Tuesday night. So
Yeah,
some of the
there's,
people
oh, I mean, maybe I'll have a
show.
cloud up top.
okay, so right there you can tell, and also what this is doing, and what you can do is so it's not, if you don't want it bouncing, that's not too bad. At least right here you can tell that you're
Show before and after.
what's happening is the reason why this is lighting up is because it's bouncing off this tough spot. Right now, your light's in the shot, right? So what you do, whoops. What you do is you just move it over to the side, and then you tell your subject to cheat her body that way. There we go.
And still. Now,
And still
why-
look at the camera.
Why are you doing that? Just
So I can get the light out of
Oh,
the
okay.
out of the
Okay.
background.
Okay, great.
Okay. So there you go. Now it's not hitting the side of her face, and also it looks better on camera instead of having your shoulders square up to have the body cheated, and depending and this is something that has to go with whatever you can cheat them, whatever way feels comfortable. It looks good to you. You know, it all depends on the day, you know, or the atmosphere.
What do you do about
Okay.
all the lights
Or
going
how
out
much,
the back?
how many.
Light spilling out the back. Basically,
What if you want that black back there?
what
Oh, I see. Because
well what the reason why that's spilling out is because of this. Okay, so what I do
put it on the bottom.
is I'd just basically not cut as much and use a single and get it so it's not reflecting as much basically. You can use shields.
Shield, that's great. Tell me what a shield is.
Shield is anything that is blocking light out of anything that's going to block light. A shield can be a cardboard
Got this
box.
Kind of black aluminum stuff that we use.
Yeah, black.
One
Well,
of them,
that's
I put it on the back of these quartz lights because they work good, but they put out almost as much light out the back as they do out.
right. Well, yeah, you can use shield on that.
Okay.
And also, what a shield is used for too is sometimes you put it directly over your camera lens to get rid of lens flare. Because sometimes when you do your backlights, it's going to happen if you widen up out, you're going to get lens flare, which is going to wash out your
Okay.
thing. So what it does is we're probably getting a little lens flare right there. Actually, you can kind of see it dropping there.
Yeah, sure.
So that's another reason why a shield is used. Is most times used for the camera. Other time
Do
it's
we have
used.
shields for the cameras?
They're in.
That's those square frames that go in the front of the camera.
Right. A shield can be anything. You can use it.
Talking about the frames right there?
No, a shield. It's
That
like
goes
a.
in front of the camera that actually shields.
Oh, in
the
No.
front of the camera. Oh, you're talking about like a sun.
Yeah, but I mean that's something you can improvise. I mean that's the one thing is don't worry about it.
You can't really improvise with the camera. You got to attach it to something.
Well, you can put it out of. You can have if you have someone else with you, or even if you're with you, take a
Oh, you
book
hold it, yeah,
and
right,
hold it.
okay.
Hold it so it's out of the way. And okay, Glenn, I'm gonna cheat you again. There we go. Okay. Frame this puppy up. And
Puppy? Camera.
okay, now watch your eyes. Now this is one thing you always tell your subjects is you tell them that the light's going on and not to look at the light. Okay, so don't look at the light, Gwen. Look at the camera. Don't look at the
Well,
light.
first you turn on and then I'll figure it out.
Okay, and because you can still hit people in the eye with light without getting them. The light can still be on them. Once they look up at the light, then they're blinded. But if they're looking at the camera, they're usually fine. Okay. Now, what I do here, now the problem is I'm getting stuff on the background. That's because she's close, but also I can get rid of that by
I suppose you don't want the sunglasses.
lifting this up.
So you, in every case here, you've done your backlighting first.
Yeah, I usually try to use my backline first, and that's just because.
I've always done the opposite, but it seems to make sense.
Yeah, well, I always
That
want my
mirrors.
backlighting stronger than my front light, and then from there, so I open first thing, even before everything, is I look like if you're setting something up, I look for a place that is aesthetically pleasing. Like I'll maybe go what I do before I even get my subjects in is I go around and hand hold my camera and look through the iris and go, oh, that looks pretty cool. And then I get my whoever's with me or my subject, and I go, okay, come in here, stand in here. Okay, walk towards me, and I bring them into the frame that I set up for them. So like whatever it is that I want to have in the background that looks kind of cool, it's out of focus. And then I go, okay, then I bring my people in. I say, all right, come into frame. And then they might be really small. That's no problem. I want my frame exactly where it is. So I'll go, okay, come towards me, walk towards me. And they get bigger. They get bigger. And, okay, stop, zoom in on them, focus, pull back out. And there's my framing set. Put my tripod right there, set it up. I'm ready to go. And then I go to my backlight. Set up my backlight. Do my backlight first. I could probably spot it out a little more. No, actually, it's pretty good. I could probably. Actually, that's pretty good. But that's it's basically it. 2-point lighting. You know, it looks pretty good. It's not blown out.
It's not fancy.
It's not fancy.
So
It's easy.
3-point lighting is overrated.
3-point lighting is overrated, but that you can. Let's go. Let's mess around here a little bit.
Point lighting might take care of the shadow under her chin.
Well,
Yeah, it doesn't bother me.
that you're not.
Yeah, it cuts off my double chin.
What you can do to cut off that is, and then what you're going to lose is you're going to get more light on the background, but to cut off that chin thing is lower your light.
So
And
what
you're
if
gonna
you go
lower
to
your
a
shadow.
medium shot or long shot? I mean, within the same show. You've got to. I guess you've got to pre-plan that as well.
Right, but then again, see, but basically your lighting for your subjects is lit, so it doesn't matter as long as your backlight isn't in there. And most of the time in most situations, you're never going to be too wide. You know, you're usually going to be, usually either going to be, really close up, like, if you want to get into trick art stuff, you're going to be really, you're going to be, pretty close, or you're just going to be, head and shoulder shot, or a medium shot. You're never going to be, usually you never really want to be wider than, even that's too wide.
Because in order to do all three of these shows, I had to have 2 shots and 3 shots.
Well, again, you've been the exception because you've had a lot of people.
Right, and that's most of the time. I mean, that's just usually you don't want to do that.
How do people do it? I mean, I see it on PBS, man. They have
Well, what?
7
they've
people
got
sitting at a
much
table.
Well, actually, they for like Washington Week in Review, what it is a round table, and they have their cameras. They have they probably have like about 4 or 5 cameras, and then they also have people who are out of the studio. They aren't even there. They're in a different place altogether. And then they cut back and forth from, and they use video screens. And it's a round table, and in a round table, it's no matter where you're at, it's a lot easier to light for a round table because they're not turning their head that much to look at someone.
Yeah, that's true.
They're not having to do extreme head turns. So that lowers their lighting down a lot too. And then they probably spend like at least 10 or 15 hours to light a certain thing like that, and they leave it because they know where people are going to sit there. Then all they do for different guests that come in there is they tweak it.
There's a PBS show that's on late night. I can't remember what
David
it is.
Frost or
It
Charlie
might be.
Rose.
They sit at a table like this, and there's one person here, one person here, one person here, one person here, and the guy moderating is sitting right here.
Right.
There's a camera there, there's a camera there, there's a camera here, there's probably 2 other camera shots.
Right.
Remember? And I don't know how they're doing. I just remember they would pull back to a wide shot back here when they
Mhm.
did the commercial, and I'd be looking at where they had their lights. It made absolutely no sense to me whatsoever.
Right. Well, see with that
They
too.
didn't have shadows, and people were looking at the camera here.
Right.
looking at each other.
Well, it's easy to do, but that again, something like that's going to take you. It's going to take you days to set up.
And those guys have spent days.
Right.
The
Probably
show
way
stays
more
there.
than access TV.
Oh,
Although
Right.
a lot of access facilities have
Right.
or studios.
And also,
Just are really
and they have neutral. They have really neutral backgrounds too. That that actually suck up the light, so you don't get any shadows.
Black to the point where the camera was right between these two people on their shoulders.
Right.
You couldn't see it.
So yeah, basically
Faded into black
they have
right behind you.
massive lighting grids, and what they do is they have a light meter, and what you do with the light meter is you go around, and to make sure that everything is balanced, is you just go around and go, okay, this is at, you know, basically I think it's with the cameras these days, 80 or 90 foot candles. They just go around everywhere to make sure that everything's balanced around the table is at 80 foot candles, and that's how it's done. And then if it's not right there, then they tweak with the light. And they spend a long time setting that up.
So in other words, what you're saying, Dick, is that MCAT's inadequate.
No,
Yeah.
I'm an idiot doing something I can't do.
No, it's always, you know, that. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, that's a good question. Right down here, again, I'm going to have to be really careful, and I should have my gloves, but this doesn't get too hot. When you're, for your lulls, whoops, I'm sorry. For your lulls, your flood, which means it's diffused a little more, is down. Okay, is wide. It's going to give you a wider beam, and your spot is up. Gives you a harsher and more direct beam. Okay, so you can look on the. See, look on this. Look right here. You can see that is flooded. That's spotted. Flood, spot. Flood, spot. Basically, all it's doing is moving the light bulb. I think with flood, it's moving it away from the reflective surface, and with the spot, it's moving it towards it. I could be totally. Yeah. So that's flood and spot, and that's something. And most of the stuff that what I've learned with lighting is I've learned, your basic rules, and then I go out and break them. I mess around. I just screw around. If you have the time, just, mess around.
And that's also another hard situation in here.
Right.
You might set up a situation where it's ideal for you, and then you come back 2 days later when you do another shoot, and everything's all messed up again. We run into that a lot. It's a big problem.
Okay. And I'll show you another trick here. We'll go with Glenn right there. Let's make sure I don't take this out. Actually, I'll turn this off. I don't want to say any bad examples. Turn this off. I'm going to move this light. And it kind of give you that PBS look that you're looking at. Kind of nice. Now, if you want to do art look here, I'm going to move this light.
We don't have a lot of time left.
Okay.
People want to ask.
If you want to, well, show this is.
Yeah, let's see the art shot.
I also want to know, this three-point lighting is one in the back, and then
And then two on the side. Your three-point lighting is your backlight, a key light, and a fill light. It's up in the air where you want your key light. Some people want your key light away from where they're looking at the camera. Other people like to have the key, right side, left side. Like if you're in Western civilization, everybody reads right to left to right, right? So even in television, your eye's going to focus from the left and then gather your information going to the right. Okay. So some people say you want your key light on the right on the left-hand side of the face. I get confused here. You want your key light on the right-hand side of the face. If I'm looking camera, I want it on the left-hand side of the face. Okay.
This
And
is right. Well, even just for the backlight. You want more light on this
Uh,
side?
um,
Because that is the right side
It's-
of the screen.
right. And doing two-point lighting, it all depends on the situation that you're in, where you can put the light. Sometimes you don't have a choice. You might want it on the other side, but if I put my light here, you notice how I put my key light on the other side. Usually you want to break it up, okay? I put my key light on this side, I put my backlight on opposite side. So no matter where you have your backlight, always put your key light on the opposite side that you have your backlight, okay? Now here we go with the art shot here. If I got, okay. Whoops. Okay, look at the camera, Glenn. Okay. Whoa. See? Thank you. Good catch. See that? Okay.
There we go. There we go.
Okay.
You want me
Whew.
to come and hold it? Maybe that cord should be.
yeah.
No, I'll
No, here, yeah. Okay.
You put it where you want it, like,
No, that's good. Go ahead. Yeah, good call. Okay, now what you do with this.
I'm a grip.
Okay, Gwen, look at the camera. And what you can do there is fill it in. Is bounce it and move it back so you have. Okay.
And then do they have those things on a stand?
Yeah, they have them on a stand. They don't have someone.
So could we use something like this without turning it on?
Another way of getting this bounce is what you can do with the umbrella. A lot of people use the umbrellas and shoot them where
MCAT, by the way, this also works really well for outdoor.
outdoor, and that's something that after we do this, I'll talk real quickly about outdoor because that's really important too. But most people, it's a flex fill. Most people use their umbrellas like this, pointing towards the subject, but if you want minimal light on the person, go ahead and turn your umbrella around and shoot it through, and it's really diffused, and it's even more direct because your light's going away, and it's not bouncing all over everything else. It's bouncing away from where you want to shoot, and it's going through this and diffusing it.
So that's a total light on there. Would
Right.
you necessarily want to use that?
We always, if we use umbrellas, to be honest, I hardly ever use umbrellas anymore, only in certain aspects. But with umbrellas, totas are the best to use them. These are spots we always, most of the time with an umbrella, it doesn't matter how much light you're using it because it's going all over the place. It doesn't matter usually. So you can change out the lights here in the totas. It doesn't matter. So as far as that's a way you can do your shots where you get that 3-point light. That's kind of like a 3-point lighting situation where one side's kind of harsh, the other side's kind of dark, and then when you get in your edit situation, there's still enough light there where it's not going to drop away, where the face is going to be totally gone. Now as far as I'll go really quickly with outdoor lighting. Rule of thumb, number one is never ever shoot into the sun unless you're doing it for an art shot, because what's going to happen when you shoot in the sun is your subject's you're going to have to iris all the way up, and your subject's still going to be dark, and your background's going to be
We really don't want you to do it with our cameras.
yeah, well,
Hard on the
yeah, it's hard on the cameras, and number two, your background's going to be really blown out, and you're not going to see anything. So what you usually do is on a sunny day is you either put them in the sun, have the sun hitting their face, and then basically that's the key light. The sun is the key light instead of the backlight. An exception to the rule is if you're in your park and there's trees going on, you go in the park and there's a big sunny patch and there's the shadow where the trees are at, right? This is a good way of using, this is one way where you can shoot in the sun, is you walk your subject into the trees, and you can see the backlight hit them from the sun, but they're in shadows, but the backlight's still kind of hitting them because their head's in the sun, but their body's in shadows. Then you use this flex fill, put it underneath them, bounce light on them, boom. You have a natural backlight, kind of an angelic form kind of thing, and gives it nice three-dimensional. Your background's dark because it's the trees and the shade. Works great. It's beautiful. As far as mixing different light sources, you don't do it. But if you go into a place, like if you're going into a place to shoot and it's massive windows and you can't close the shutters, put your iris on your 5600, your sun outdoor light. Use these lights right here and use a color correction gel, which is this right here, and balanced outdoor light. So once you put this over the halogen light, it's going to turn that color into daylight. Okay? It's this one. It's a light blue. It's not the dark blue one. It's the light blue one. Okay? So this turns your halogen lights into outdoor, into sunlight. And so you can use the sunlight that's going into the room, and everything will look natural, basically. And turn off the fluorescence, no matter what, if you can. And is there any questions?
Presentations where they use an overhead projector and they don't constantly use it enough to
Mm-hmm.
speak in between.
Right.
How do you like the person?
Okay. Overhead projectors are really tough. When you see them done in shows, what happens is the only way you can shoot an overhead projector is changing the bulb in the overhead projector because basically the overhead projector is a lot brighter than anything else that's going to be in the room. Your subject is going to be really dark, and your overhead projector is going to be really light. So I'd say, and it's a different color. There is a way. That's a tough question. It's really hard to do. Number one, if you really get into it and you need the overhead projector in it, you can try to use tough spun and put it over the light so the overhead thing isn't as bright. But then the other people in the situation might not be able to see it. So the only other way to get around to it is to try to bring them up to how bright the overhead projector light is. So you use one of these lights, and you look through your camera, and you go, okay, she or he looks as bright as the overhead projector, and then hopefully they'll be the same lighting thing. And then you use your barn doors, and you just try to keep it on them. That's a really tough thing to do. Overhead projector thing is really tough to do. Number one, it's tough because another cardinal rule thing that people say is with video, and it's kind of hard in community access because sometimes you have to do it. But number one, on television, you usually don't want to show people writing, or you don't want to show writing, because it takes a long time for people, or it takes a varying amount of time for people to read stuff. And so if they're sitting home watching television, they can't go, whoa, hey, wait a minute, rewind the tape, I didn't catch that. And so even though we have VCRs these days, but it's kind of tough. If it comes to an overhead projector thing, what I do is the best thing to do is maybe a two-camera setup when you get in post. Just have one camera on the person, one camera on your overhead projector. So one camera's on the person talking, writing, and the other camera's focused on the overhead projector, and it's a split screen going on, like a mathematics class. They're kind of showing you how things are done. It's probably the best way to do it, because when you have, again, it comes down to the thing of two things going on at once. You're in a classroom. You can either focus on the professor talking and the overhead projector, but when you get to a wide shot, it's really hard for you to it's hard for the viewer at home. It takes a lot for the viewer at home to focus in on it. It's really hard to grab their attention. Does that make sense? I hope I answered your question.
Is there any way to use that light and bounce it back onto the subject?
No, because that light is for one specific need, which is that goes
You
up.
almost have to get in front of it and
Mhm.
bounce it back.
I mean, is it something that you're using, like, is it a classroom situation, or is it kind of like something that you want to do just for like a trick or something?
We do get those. People do that for conferences.
Yeah, I'd say in presentations, the best thing to do would to stay away from white boards as much as possible, because white is probably the worst color that you could use in video, because it blows out.
Worse than red.
Well, no, red's pretty bad too, because it bleeds. But
That's something we have.
I mean, your stereotypical chalkboard's all right. Like a green. I know it's pretty hard to find those anymore. But something just off. It could be an off-white color, as long as it isn't bright white. Because what happens when you're lighting someone, you got this board that's just blooming. When I say blooming, I mean it's really bright. And then your subject is dark.
We have a lot of charts and diagrams
Mhm.
on our show, and people are always make them on a post board.
Mhm.
It's always a nightmare with the reflection.
The reflection.
Recently we realized we did some on newsprint,
Mm-hmm.
So much easier to work with,
Yeah.
cheaper than
It's,
foam floor.
yeah, it's cheaper. Yeah, it's anything that doesn't have a glossy finish to it. You know, because anything that has a glossy, same thing with shooting a picture frame with a picture in it. You know, you're gonna get a reflection from the light. So the only way that you can get away from it is maybe tilt your board down towards the floor, so the light's not directly hitting it, so it's not hitting it as much, basically. And keep it off the board as much as possible. Because no matter what that board, if it's white, that board's going to show up. You won't have to put any light on it at all. Whatever light that's going around that you're using to light your subjects is going to be enough for that board, more than enough usually. And yeah, and that's a tough thing too. You know, as far as, and again, if you're doing that, you know, for an information thing, and if it's a live show, I'd always like try to do a wipe. You know, where at least part of your thing is the information on the board, and the other part is the person talking.
Sometimes we go with the iris control back in the studio, and we have to go to the chart and actually adjust the iris.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't just take a 10%.
Right. Yeah, because it's different. It's
And then
different
we
light.
to the person instead of back out.
Right. Yeah. That's good. At least you do that, so it's not overblown. It's a tough thing to do. Is there any more questions? Yeah.
When you
Yeah,
do
let's
your,
go one more question.
when you do your shoots where you have incandescent lights
Mm-hmm.
and the sun coming through,
Mm-hmm.
that you have, you don't have any wickedly,
Mm-hmm.
what do you set the camera?
Okay. Number one, I'd always try to get it down to one light source. Always try, like, if you got sunlight coming through, there's shades, pull the shades. If there isn't shades, don't shoot in that room. Just get away from that situation, because it's going to wreak more havoc than it is going to be good.
That's
Basically,
especially true with our Panasonic SVHS camcorder, because it's a one chip and it just cannot handle that.
and you can't control you can't, that iris thing on there doesn't do anything at all.
It'll look awful.
Right.
That's when you start getting the Martian people.
Right. So just and that's the thing. If you get in that situation, get out of it. Find a place where you can control the light source. And if worse comes to worse, turn off your incandescent lights or your overhead lights, and use a blue gel for that, which is going to bounce these lights to your outdoor light. Okay. Your spots here.
Yeah.
Okay, the
Yeah,
blue.
sun coming in.
Right, the sun coming in, so the sun, and don't put them in front of the window if the sun's direct, because you're never gonna be able to. There's no way that you're gonna be able to power this light to sunlight, because sunlight is, it's big, and this light's, it's a tiny thing. So you always use your sunlight as either the key, and using that light as a fill. So don't shoot directly into the window, meaning the window as the background if the sun is out there. If you can see the sun through that window. Turn away. Have your camera with the window back there, and have them facing the window, basically, so it's shining on them.
Scott, it's an excellent workshop. Thank you
Thanks.
very
Yeah,
much.
no problem. If you guys have any more questions, go ahead and give them to Lori, and I can drop by, or you can give me. I'll leave my number here. I'll leave my home number here, and you guys can give me a call up,
Got
or
it.
yeah, and I'd be more than happy to help you out and stuff, and give you some questions. If you guys want to do
I learned a lot.
trick lighting or have any problems. I don't know like anything. I'm still learning, and I hope to be learning till the day I die. So, the biggest thing is just play. If you have time, especially, take a light kit home. Take a camera light kit home, and a monitor, and mess around with it.
Well, thank you again.
Yeah.
Very much. That was wonderful.
You're welcome.
Thanks for coming.
You're welcome. Hey, no problem.
It was well worth it. Yeah, I've got to shut you off because I'm almost out of tape.
Okay.
I was like, come on, gotta fit.
Yeah, I hope I wasn't too far. I mean, I was rambling.
No, it was
there. Hopefully I made
excellent.
sense.
You made total sense.
Okay. Hey.